Hi guys, welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. And today, guys, today is gonna be my top 10 books of 2023 in March. But, I haven't filmed it yet. And so yeah, it's from 2023. So it is currently March. I think this is better than putting out a top 10 list every month, being like, oh, these are my top 10 books so far as of March. Like, come on. Like, come on. Come on.
Come on.
Anyway, this is of all of the books that I read last month or last year, and it's qualified. It's qualified. So it's actually not the top 10 books because then it would be a lot of the same series. So here are the stipulations: no rereads, or else Weird Sisters would be on there. So no rereads, no, Shogun will be on there too. No, only one per series, because really, like, with one glaring exception, when I put a book on there, it's really the whole series. So only one per series, and I guess that's it. So no rereads and only one per series. So I'll do a live tier ranking of all the books that I read last year. I'll do that where it's, then it can kind of like gauge the separate books per series. But I'm not going to do that here. So this is just going to be the top 10 books with, of course, honorable mentions. So it's really the top for books. I'm not putting the honorable mentions in order. I'm not doing it. I just grab some. I'm like, oh, these almost made the cut. So yeah. So these are my top 10 books of 2023. So before I go ahead and get into it, how many can you predict right now? One, question: how many KJ Parker books are on there? Two, did KJ Parker take the #1 spot? We'll see. Without wasting any more time,
Let's get down to business.
let's check it out and see. Starting with number 10. So, number 10. So 10 is going to be, it would be the series, the Siwas Korak series that KJ Parker released in October, November, December of last year. And my favorite of those three is Boosh, Siwas Korak's Captures the Castle, which is the second book of that series. So the first book is actually, I think, my least favorite, weirdly. There's too much. The first book feels like a novella drawn out too much. The second book feels a little less like that. And also, the second book has a lot of what I really love about Parker, which is that kind of sociological breakdown of different cultures that, he invents. And this particular one is like, a culture that you can't cross their territory line or they kill you, and they're completely remote, and they don't deal with foreigners at all, and so no one knows very much about them. And also about capturing a castle and why they need to give this castle to somebody else. Siwas Korax is a grave robber, if you don't like him, and if you do like him, he is a battlefield salvage specialist, where they go to various battlefields and they take the contract to clean up afterwards. And then, sell the salvage and all that kind of stuff. So Siwas Korax is amusing, especially for a first-person character, which I don't always love in Parker books. I always love his third-person books better than his first-person books. But I thought Capture the Castle was everything that is really great about the first-person narratives, like the novellas and everything. And Siwas Korax is certainly an endearing character, and there are returning characters as well that I like. So yeah, I think these read so fast, and I think I read book 2, Captures the Castle, faster than any of them. So it is definitely a KJ Parker, unsurprising, and Siwas Korax Captures the Castle. The first one is called Siwas Korax Deals with the Dead, and the last one, Siwas Korax Gets Away with Murder. But Captures the Castle is my favorite in the number 10 slot. In the number 9 slot, this was a surprise, and I did not know when I started reading it would be in my number 9 slot, and that is Boosh, The Judas Blossom by Stephen Arion, which is the first book in the Nightingale and the Falcon? Nightingale and the Falcon. This is a historical fantasy about Persia, or the Mongols, coming into contact with the Persians, and so it's not Genghis, but his grandchildren. Yeah, but his Genghis Khan's grandchildren in the 1200s conquering Persia. And this is a multi-POV story. And the top 10 lists always worked really well when I did a review for literally every book that I read, because then it was easier to refamiliarize myself with everything they're about. So I can remember large points, but not every specific thing that I enjoyed. But I do like about this, I love the warfare, I like the siege warfare, I like the varying POVs with varying loyalties. Like some of them, like several of them are, Persian loyalists within the Mongol Empire, and are struggling with that loyalty, from a Persian general to a woman who is made one of the wives of the Khan, and as well as Hulagu himself and his son. His son Temujin is my least favorite POV, but he is the magicist. So we'll see. I think I like the historical part more than the fantasy part, but that's just me as a historical reader. But I strongly recommend this. It is super easy to read, very, very just intrigue filled, lots of death, lots of conflicting loyalties and subterfuge, and I am so eager to see where the second book takes us. So, The Judas Blossom, highly recommend, number 9 of 2023. So, number 8 is on here purely by the strength of its first book, which is my number 8 pick for 2023, and that is Boosh, The Daughter of the Empire, by Jenny Wirtz and Raymond E. Feist. So, this is the first book in the Empire trilogy, and it is tied into Rift War, but it's on the other side of the Rift. And this was part of a read-along that I did in the summer on my channel, and this book is so good. This first book is so good, and I like this first book significantly more than the two books that follow it. I like the two books that follow it, but not even close to as much as I like this book. This book is about Mara, who is the head of her basically samurai, basically the head of her samurai family, and about the absolutely thrilling political machinations that she goes through to maintain power and control of her family without it being utterly destroyed by the enemy families that are circling like sharks in the water. Mara is a wonderful protagonist. This has so many story beats that you don't expect. I really like books. I like the Japan-inspired setting, largely because I love samurai, but also because of the social rituals that everyone just follows unquestioningly. And I like how Mara is able to play those kind of against people, because a lot of this plot would not work if everyone were not so married to convention and tradition and the way things are always done. But I like how all of that can be, turned around and used against your enemies. It's just really, really good. You do not have to have read Rift War to understand this. In fact, this book is largely disconnected from the Rift War, significantly more than the next two books are. So that may be why I like this book more than the other two. Yeah, that's definitely why, because this book deals almost entirely with the Saranawani and not with the stuff on the other side of the Rift or whatever. But it's just a fantastic book, like political intrigue, strong female protagonist, done amazingly without any of the what the trademark copyright strong female protagonist that is just a guy, but reskinned with a new female Fortnite skin, I guess. So, really, really good. Really, really good. Strongly recommend it. You also, if you aren't interested in reading the whole trilogy, this can totally stand alone. Like, I could have read this first book and been fine. I did not actually need the rest of it. I enjoyed the other two books, but I did not need them in order to have a complete experience with this one. So, really, really good. Strongly recommend. I'll probably read this book again at some point. So, number 8, Daughter of the Empire by Jenny Wirtz. All right, at number 7, we have, I didn't realize this was going to be here until I looked at my list. It's like, wow, really? I was like, oh yeah, I did like this. Boom, Crowfall by Ed McDonald. Third book in the series, in the Raven's Mark series. The first book being Blackwing, the second being Ravencry. I actually liked Ravencry the least. But Crowfall is the third book, and I think it is just a tremendous conclusion. It is so weird, but it has all of the stuff that made Blackwing so good. Ravencry was also really good. Just don't think I liked the plot quite as much, but Crowfall goes places you would not dream of it going. It has that noir kind of feel. Again, Blackwing, this whole series feels like Stephen King's The Gunslinger meets Philip Marlowe meets The Black Company meets H.P. Lovecraft. Absolutely bizarre. And the stakes could not be higher in this one. Galharrow is whatever Galharrow is going on in this book, but I loved it. I just tore through this book. Really, really enjoyed it. So glad that Leanna got me to read this series, even though it took, a million years to actually finish. I am so glad. I recommend this series so much. Like, each book is less than 400 pages, or 400 pages maximum. You should definitely read the Raven's Mark series by Ed McDonald. I like this stuff way better than McDonald's other book that I read of his, Daughter of Redwinter. I did not like that as much. I love Blackwing and the Raven's Mark series. I'll definitely read this series again. Strongly recommend. 5 out of 5 stars. Like Crowfall, just a wonderful, wonderful, like bizarre, what epic finale. So, boosh, Crowfall as number 7. Number 6, and these 6 right here were hard to decide between. Like, my top 6 and really my top 6 series were so good. Like, so good this year. It was very hard to decide between them. I think maybe 1 and 2 are very clearly 1 and 2. But after that, 1 and 2. But after that, all of these could be anywhere because they're just so good. So, my number 6 is Boosh, The Second Empire, which is book 4 of the Monarchies of God series by Paul Kearney. So, this is very... it's like low fantasy. It's very much historical fantasy. It's dealing with it's like a fantasy reimagining of the fall of Byzantium or Constantinople, and there is like the Europeans and then the Arabic people, and they are a clashing or whatever. But there's also this second empire across the sea, and I read this series. I had literally never heard of anybody talking about this series, which is really kind of, that draws me to stuff for sure. And I read the first book, and actually I read it along with Katrina and Angela, who don't hang around BookTube anymore, which makes me so sad because I love them both incredibly dearly. But I read it during after I was in my car accident while I was recovering. It was the month of December, and I was, chair ridden or whatever, and we read Hawkwood's Voyage, which is the first book, and they didn't like it as much as I did, but I loved it. There are certain parts that I don't like it, like, at all. There's like some weird sexy time stuff that is just like, what is happening? And Hawkwood is the least interesting of all the POV characters, of all the protagonists, and that bears out through the whole series. Hawkwood's the least interesting. I don't know why it's named after Hawkwood. I don't know why Kearney likes Hawkwood so much. Hawkwood sucks. But the rest, so good. And book 4, I haven't done this since I've been on BookTube, and I'm mad that I haven't done it, and I need to do it. Like, I just need to keep doing it. I need to do what I did with this series, is as soon as I finished Hawkwood's Voyage, I picked up book 2, which was The Heretic Kings. And after that, I picked up book 3, Iron Wars. And after that, I picked up Second Empire, which is book 4. And after that, I picked up Ships from the West, which is book 5, and that is where my hubris got me, because book 5 is not good, nor is it required. So, why this book is so good. You 100% should read it. It's Flintlock fantasy, like, at its finest. Historical fantasy. So good. Guys, it's so good. Like, I need to make a video talking about this. Other people need to read this series. It's so good. Guys, and listen to me. There's always so much to talk about how, like, an indie book can ruin a series for me. No, it did not ruin this at all. I did not like the last book, book 5, Ships from the West, at all. My least favorite book of the year. My worst book of the year. But it did not in any way ruin what came before it. In fact, don't read the 5th book, guys. You don't need it. Listen to me. You do not need to read Ships from the West to be satisfied. You don't. It takes place literally almost 20 years after the end of book 4, which is the Second Empire. And that's why I like the Second Empire so much, because it is the conclusion of this story that's been building, and it is so good. I think I read it in 2 days. Like, this 400-page book, I read it in like 2 days, because it was so good. Everything just culminating in war, so good. Like, it is gritty, and this clash of peoples, and can they unite together against the common enemy or not? Or is the common enemy really an enemy? Like, whatever. After the Second Empire, only one plot line is left unresolved. And it's like when you watch a really good like series with a lot of threads going, or read a really good series with a lot of threads going. You don't need everything resolved. Like, that one can stay. Like, that's fine. Because one book, Shifts in the West, was not enough to resolve that plot line. Everything happens too quickly, and it's dumb. Like, it's just not good. Like, it's just not good. So you can have that one plot line, because guess what? It's the least interesting plot line in the whole series. So that could have gone and not been resolved, and it would have been fantastic. So I strongly recommend, like, you don't have to read book 5, guys. You don't. Read books 1 through 4. They're a complete narrative. This is like an epilogue book that someone went back to the well to try to, it's Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which no one cares about. Everyone agrees sucks and doesn't ruin the first 7 books. So that's what it's like. So you should 100% read The Monarchy of God. So good, guys. And then come talk to me about it, please. So good. Like, I give all 4 books 5 stars. Book 5 gets like 1.5 stars at best. Boom, book 5. So this is not a complete series. Boosh, Blade of Dream by Daniel Abraham. This is book 2 in the Kithamar trilogy. And so book 3 is not out. Book 3 is going to come out this year, and I think it's called Judge of Worlds, which is awesome. And the Kithamar trilogy is epic because it tells the same story over the same year period, but from different perspectives. So Age of Ash is a look from how the poor and the very lower classes of Kithamar deal with this particular situation. And book 2 deals with the merchant class and the nobles, how they deal with it. I don't know what book 3 is going to deal with, but this, because I listened to Age of Ash again, like right before this, and seeing how they intertwine, just so good. Y'all know that I'm an Abraham stan. I love what Abraham does. I love what he does with his characters. I love this. Like, so many good characters, so many good lines from this. I love seeing the way the plots intersect. I like this one significantly more than Age of Ash, but I like Age of Ash more having read this book. So stay tuned to see where this series ends up in my top 10 series of all time, which will certainly, I'm certain this series will be on there because I love Daniel Abraham's character work. So Blade of Dream, absolutely fantastic. 5 stars, 100%. Boom. At number 5. So this book was at number 3 for a long time when a late year book just like kind of took its place and knocked it down a peg. But this whole series was just wonderful and a delight. And my favorite of the series is, again, book 2. And that is A Labyrinth of Scions and Sorcery. And this is by Curtis Craddock, and it is the book 2 of the Risen Kingdoms series. Again, one of the series that we did a read-along for on my channel. And it was so much fun to talk to Anitha and to Sarah about these books. I love this series because of the relationship between Jean-Claude and Isabel, his kind of ward, and there are so many like older guy, younger charge like characters that's just weird and creepy. None of that here. It is such a good like found family, father figure, like adopted daughter kind of scenario. It's just really good. I love the magic system in this series, the airships, and the mystery involved. Book 3 I liked, again, like the least by a long shot, mostly because much of what I loved about the first 2 is not in the 3rd book. Part of which is because the main protagonists are separated for most of the 3rd book when they're not in the first 2. But the first 2, just the dynamic between Isabel and Jean-Claude is just so good. Like, it's just so good. I love trying to figure out who it is. I love the different types of magic they have. And it's set on floating islands, and it's kind of like a fantasy take on the age of exploration, where we have, like, a faux France and a faux England and a faux Spain and a faux Germany, and I think Russia too. But this one's really, really good. This one's really good. It took everything I liked about the first one and, like, dialed it up a notch. Really, really good. Love that series. Definitely, definitely one of my favorite series for sure. Again, kind of let down by the third book, as we all were. My wife also read them and was also let down by the third book. But the first two, really, really good. That's why it takes the number 4 spot on my top 10 list. Now, book 3. I'll never read this book again, but this book was so profoundly moving for me that it knocked Labyrinth down a peg, and that is Beartown by Frederick Backman. And this is my first Backman book that I've read, and I like his writing. He evokes that small town feel really, better than anybody except Stephen King. I don't like all of Stephen King's books. In fact, many of Stephen King's books I find fine. But also, some of my favorite books are also Stephen King books. He does small town feel like nobody else. Backman here is a close second. This book I just picked up. This was one of the books that I picked up on a whim. Like, if you like the books I was talking about in my TBR, and I hated it and everything about it because it is so real. It could happen in any town. It could certainly happen in my town, of just how monstrous people are and how blind they become to their own failings when it comes to something that is important, like sports. Or, like when something is important to a community and something endangers that, even if it is endangered for a good reason and someone has committed a crime and needs to be punished, the fact that people will rally around that person because that person is of the right breeding, the right stock, the right profession, the right kind of person. And so, other people are demonized, even though it is about justice denied. And that affects me profoundly. And I hate every single character in the book except for one of the moms, who is awesome. And, like, I root for her on every page. This book is a trilogy. There are 2 other books, but I'm not sure I'm going to read them. I think this was enough. I liked how this ended. I was satisfied with it, while hating every minute of it, and every person in that town, every person on that page. I want that whole town to get bought out and turned into a parking lot, and everybody relocated. Just move them to somewhere else. You know what? Move them to the middle of the Atlantic. Just put them on a raft and just set them adrift, because they're all horrible and deserve whatever horrors they bring down upon themselves. Absolutely, but just infuriating in a way that is just so real. It could not be this infuriating if it was not this real. So, strongly recommend Beartown, especially if you like contemporary fiction that deals with, how we handle injustice in this world. But really, really good. I liked it a lot, but I'll never read it again because of how angry it made me. All right, to the number 2 position. And this was a challenge. These were very close. But number 2 is going to be Evil for Evil. Second book of the Engineer Trilogy by K.J. Parker. Again, book 2 I liked the best. Book 3 was not as good as the first 2. That was the consensus for like 3 of the 4 series I read this year as read along, where the third book was not as good as the first 2, and the second book was the best. No, that's for some people, not for me. So there's just this one and Risen Kingdoms. And then I like the first book the best in the Empire Trilogy, and the second book was the worst. But whatever. This is book 2 of the Engineer Trilogy, which is the final series that we read in read along this past year. And I love it. Like, the Engineer Trilogy I do not particularly enjoy where Parker took it. It is perfectly reasonable that that it ends the way it does. It is just not my favorite thing. And if it had been different, this would have been one of my favorite series of all time. Like I love so much about this series. The character work in Parker Trilogy, which is really the second trilogy I've read by him, the first one being the Silas Korax one, but the first third-person trilogy I've read by him. The character of Ziani Vaatzis as the Mezentian engineer is, like, they're all terrible. This is an examination of human banality and just how terrible we are to each other, and about the things that we do for the things and the people that we love, and how we are manipulated and we have our feelings used against us, and how no matter how much we try, we may end up right where we started. All of the characters I hate, except for one, and that is why this is my favorite one. It is the introduction of Gase Dorenja. And Dorenja is one of the most interesting fantasy characters I've ever read. And he is horrible, and I shouldn't like him as much as I do, but man, do I. He is introduced in book 2, and that is why book 2 supersedes book 1, because Dorenja is... I love Dorenja. He's just this creepy, like... Everyone describes him like this weird, like, creepy spider guy, but he's not a spider. He just reminds people of a spider, and he makes everybody uncomfortable, but he's also brilliant and a perfect foil for Ziani. So good. Like, I've never seen a character like this, and Parker writes him so well. But from Ziani to Dorenja to Beatriz to Orsea and Valens, so many good characters, and of course Pacellus or Celis and the Department of Necessary Evil. Just how much people will sacrifice to get what they want, and how fanaticism can lead to utter destruction, and working within specifications, and what acceptable tolerance levels are with machines and with relationships and with people. It is just a fascinating relationship study and an exercise in human misery. Everything about it is depressing. I think it's the most cynical work of his by far. But it is so, so good, and I will 100% read this series again, even though I didn't particularly like where it ended. Strongly recommend. I do not recommend it as your first Parker experience, but if you already know that you like KJ Parker and you haven't read the Engineering Trilogy, you should read it. It's so good, guys. It's so good. So that is my number 2 book of the year, barely beat out by number 1. But before I continue, I'll go ahead and talk about my honorable mentions. One is a new novella by K.J. Parker called Relics. I loved it because it is the epistolary format, which he hasn't done since Purple and Black, which is my favorite of his novella of all time, and it'll never be topped. I love Purple and Black. So Relics is really good. You can only find it in the the Under My Skin bind-up, the short story collection. Another honorable mention is Wickwire Watch by Jacqueline Hagan. I really, really liked this, and the more I've sat away from it, the more I've liked it, as opposed to forgetting more about it and thinking about it less. I have not yet read book 2, but I need to. Part of why I like this so much is because it, like, one genre cannot really define it. It jumps around from, like, one thing to another, and while I don't like all of the jumps it takes, I like most of them. And also the main character is based on the Artful Dodger, played by Jack Wilde from the Oliver musical, which maybe that's influencing me, but I don't care. So good. I love the way this is written. Absolutely wonderful. And also, my final honorable mention is The Hexologist by Josiah Bancroft. Christina and I both read this. Really, really liked it. Less kind of heavy than the Books of Babel, but this could be much more episodic. But it's like, a husband and wife couple who really, really love each other, which you don't see in fantasy a lot. I like what it says about the relationship of the upper class to the lower class, and the responsibility of the governing and the responsibility of the governing bodies to those who are governed by them. And, supernatural mystery solving. So I really, really liked it. I know some people don't gel with Bancroft's writing style, but I do. And I really, really like it, and am pumped for book 2. So I like that a lot. Check those out as well. But we have come down to it. We are finally here at the number 1 book of this year. And weirdly. In a complete upset, one of the first books that I read this year, in fact, it was the first book I read after I finished the Monarchies of God books that I was reading when the year turned over. It is Imperium by Robert Harris, the first book of the Cicero trilogy. I don't know why I love this book so much. And I love this book like significantly more than I like books 2 and 3. Book 3 was a distant third place, and a lot of people, several people, like book 2 the best of this. And I think I see why. I think book 2 is the best if you don't know the story already. But a lot of the plot twists in book 2 are not plot twists because I know the history, so I know what was going to happen. But people like Pete and Anitha did not, and they liked that one the best. And I completely get that because I think that would be the same case with me if I did not already know how it was going to end. Now, I knew already less about Cicero's early career than I do his mid and late career, and that is what this one is about. This is before he ever makes consul. And the amount that is said about politics, and this is a better political thriller than any political thriller that I've read in modern times that deals with the modern political system. Cicero, through the character of Cicero, and it's told from a frame narrative from his freed slave Tiro, who was his secretary for, their entire lives, basically. It is a political masterclass. If you want to know how to write political intrigue, you should read Imperium. You don't have to read the whole book, like the whole series. Just read Imperium. The grasp that Cicero has of politics and the lack of shame that the Romans had, and people like Cicero, like the Romans, if you were striving to be a top politician, you didn't have the shame that accompanies you having to do things that are perhaps morally questionable in order to achieve a political aim. Now, there's a broader framework of like pietas and dignitas that you're trying to, keep without being super corrupt. But at the same time, like Cicero doesn't even blanch at having to do these things, and it's shown so well in his relationship with his cousin Lucius, who also wants to be a politician, but is always like, guys, this is immoral. Like, where's the morality? We're trying to stand for justice and integrity here. And Cicero's like, you know what his problem is? He thinks politics is a fight for justice. And Cicero just goes, politics is a profession. And that is so indicative of what this is. Like, it's not about the public good and doing and fighting for what's right or whatever. It's a profession. It's your job. And when it's your job, your goal is to stay in it and keep that like proximity to power that you can. And Cicero, this shows how brilliant Cicero is. It shows how arrogant he is. Cicero's such a complicated character, and I don't like Cicero normally because he's such a twerp. This made me sympathetic not only to Cicero, but also to that senatorial class like Catullus and Hortensius, who I normally despise when I'm reading things from Caesar's perspective. But a book that makes me sympathize with the freaking aristocrats, it's just so well written. Cicero's command of oratory, seeing how like the law courts and how that worked and its influence on politics, it's just brilliant. Like, it is, Imperium to me is the perfect political thriller, and I'm not sure I've read a better one. And the fact that it takes place in ancient Rome is just a bonus for me. So I love this book. I continue to think about it. I will 100% read it. I'm not sure if I'll read the whole series again, but I'll definitely read Imperium because I liked it so much, and I don't know why. I don't know why, but I think about Imperium all the time, and I really like the smallness of the plot in the first one before it gets bigger and bigger with like conspiracy and then Caesar and all that stuff in books 2 and 3. But absolutely fantastic. So I realize this is late, and this is not it's 2 months, or I'm in the third month of 2024 and just releasing this. But you know what? No one's gonna care because people release top 10s literally no matter what freaking month it is. So you know what? Deal with it. So guys, what were your top 3 books that you read last year? It doesn't have to be in any particular order, but just tell me your 3 favorite books that you read last year. Have you read any of these? Probably not. But if you have, let me know. Guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, information on my Patreon and Discord is down in the description. And remember, Sanderson delendus est. I'll see you next time, guys.